You know that feeling when you finally get a second to sit down? Maybe you curl up on the couch on a lazy Sunday afternoon, and instead of feeling this wave of relief, your heart actually starts pounding. No way, right? Your mind starts racing, your chest tightens up, and suddenly, just trying to unwind feels literally like a trap. It's the ultimate paradox of modern life. We're all desperately exhausted, yet the very second we try to relax, we panic. So today, we're unpacking the mystery behind exactly why your body flat out rejects relaxation.
I mean, it sounds totally irrational, right? Why does doing absolutely nothing feel so dangerous? I really want to speak directly to you right now, because if you've ever felt that deep, bone-crushing exhaustion mixed with this bizarre, heavy guilt the second you try to rest, you are absolutely not alone. You might be telling yourself to just chill out, but your body is screaming that relaxation is a terrible, terrible idea. That wild conflict between what your mind wants and what your body is actually allowing, that's exactly what we're going to decode today.
Researchers actually have a name for this whole shebang. They call it rest intolerance, or sometimes rest resistance. Basically, this happens when we get stuck in what's known as a productivity as safety loop. We start to subconsciously tie our inherent self-worth to what we're producing. And when that happens, being still doesn't just feel lazy, it triggers intense, overwhelming feelings of guilt or shame. You've essentially trained your brain to believe that if you aren't constantly moving, you aren't safe. It completely transforms relaxation from a necessary recovery tool into this massive source of stress.
Section 1. Stuck in survival mode. Okay, let's dive into this, because to truly understand rest intolerance, we have to peel back the psychology and look right at our biology. We need to figure out why our physical bodies are acting like cars stuck in high gear, literally unable to find neutral. To see how this works, we've got to contrast two incredibly important systems in your body. On one side, you have the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight-or-flight response. On the other, the parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest response. Think of it like a giant light switch. Normally, you face a threat, the sympathetic switch flips on, you deal with the threat, and then the parasympathetic switch flips back on to calm you right down. Simple, right? But when you're under chronic stress, that switch physically jams. The sympathetic nervous system stays stuck in the on position, completely blocking the parasympathetic response from ever kicking in. Your body just kind of forgets how to flip the switch back.
And when that switch is jammed, you enter a state called hypervigilance. Basically, it's a survival mechanism where your nervous system just stays on high alert, constantly scanning for threats even when you're sitting in a perfectly safe, quiet room. Imagine having a broken smoke alarm in your brain. It's blaring at 3 a.m., forcing all your bodily processes to work overtime, heightening every sense, and prepping you for an emergency that doesn't actually exist. You can't just ignore a blaring smoke alarm, right? Which is exactly why you can't just force yourself to relax.
And the way this physically manifests in our bodies, it's just fascinating. We actually pulled this quote from a community forum, r/anxiety help, where users share their real lived experiences. One user pointed out something huge. They said, the trick for anxiety is to get control of the stomach. It's most likely the stomach sending false signals of flight or fight. This absolutely hits the nail on the head. It brilliantly illustrates how our physical organs can literally trick our brains. The nervous system is a two-way street, you know? An unsettled, stressed-out gut can send signals straight up to the brain, convincing it that you're in mortal danger, and boom, you are thrown right back into a state of panic. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that for some people, the inability to relax is literally hardwired into their DNA. Notice the genetic column right here. Variants in specific genes like COMT and BDNF actually govern how your stress hormones and neurotransmitters function. So if you have these variants, your biology naturally hinders the relaxation response. Combine that with conditions like generalized anxiety disorder, which physically causes the brain's threat detection system to become super overactive, and you can see that struggling to unwind is often a hardwired biological reality. It is definitely not a lack of willpower. Section 2. Where hypervigilance comes from.
So if our biology is reacting to a jammed switch, who jammed it in the first place? How do we even get to a place where our own bodies won't let us rest? Well, very often it starts incredibly early on. If you grew up in an unpredictable environment, your developing brain had to adapt. To stay safe, it learned constant vigilance. Maybe you developed an intense fear of appearing idle because, hey, being caught doing nothing led to criticism. You learned to tie your personal worth directly to your output. And here's the thing, these aren't just memories, they are literal neural pathways. Your brain learned that stillness basically equals danger, and that early childhood programming persists right into adulthood, making even the safest, quietest environments feel inherently threatening.
And then, well, adulthood piles on. We accumulate all these micro-triggers over the years. Things like repressed trauma, PTSD, or complex PTSD keep hyperarousal constantly running in the background. But honestly, it doesn't even require a massive traumatic event. Chronic, low-grade stressors, think toxic workplaces or financial worries, combined with constant mental overstimulation from a 24/7 cycle of distressing news, keep the mind in a perpetual go mode. The stress just piles up over time until you reach a point where you become completely unswitchable.
Section 3. Rewiring your nervous system.
I want you to just take a second right now. Notice how fast your brain might be processing all this information. Let's just slow down for a moment. Drop your shoulders a bit, take a nice, deep breath. Because recognizing the problem is only the first half of our explainer. The absolutely crucial takeaway is this. You cannot simply think your nervous system into relaxing. Because your body is physically stuck in a survival state, trying to use pure logic to calm down is like trying to talk a computer out of having a glitch. It just doesn't work. We have to use somatic interventions, actual physical bodily actions to bypass the analytical brain and speak directly to the nervous system in its own language. Let's move to and see how this builds into an actual practical tool you can use today. This is the 4-7-8 diaphragmatic breathing method. It is a direct physical signal of safety to your brain. Here's how it works. You inhale quietly for 4 seconds, you hold that breath for 7 seconds, and then you exhale completely for 8 seconds. By extending that exhale so it's longer than the inhale, you are mechanically forcing the parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest switch we talked about earlier, to flip back on. And there are several other really powerful physical techniques out there. You can use grounding exercises to anchor yourself in the present moment. There's progressive muscle relaxation, which involves systematically tensing and then releasing every single muscle group. That's actually been shown to lower blood pressure and reduce stress hormone activity. Autogenic relaxation, acupressure, or even just simple mindfulness awareness checks throughout your day. They all serve the exact same vital purpose. They systematically reteach your nervous system how to register safety in the present moment. But remember, because these are deep, sometimes genetically or traumatically ingrained survival patterns, DIY techniques aren't always going to cut it. Professional support is a highly valid and often necessary route. This includes things like somatic therapy to release unprocessed stress that's literally stored in the body, EMDR, cognitive behavioral therapy, or even chiropractic care to physically realign the nervous system. And as community insights consistently validate, medications like Xanax or Prozac can sometimes be the absolute necessary bridge to help a hypervigilant brain finally find its footing. So, I want you to remember this absolutely crucial point. If you struggle to rest, if you feel guilty when you sit down, if your heart races when everything is supposed to be perfectly quiet, this is not a personal failing. You are not broken. You are simply experiencing a learned survival response. Your inability to relax is actually a brilliantly designed, though highly outdated, protective mechanism. Your body is working overtime because it loves you and it's trying to keep you safe based on old information. Which leaves us with this final thought. What if your inability to relax isn't a weakness at all, but your body's ultimate attempt to save you? Once you realize that your hypervigilance is basically just a bodyguard that forgot it's allowed to go off duty, you can finally stop fighting yourself. You can start using the somatic tools we've discussed today to gently thank your nervous system for its hard work and finally give it permission to rest. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to take one more slow, deep breath before you move on to whatever is next in your day.